Hi, I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I'm referred to as the Big Game Hunter because I coach people and organizations to play their game bigger. And I listen to podcasts, and I do job search radio and two others, No BS Job Search Advice and No BS Hiring Advice. So, I listen for podcasts because I'm trying to learn things. I'm at the gym. It's a good way to occupy my time. And there's one that I listen to called Reply All. It's from a firm called Gimlet Media, who are ex-NPR people. And this morning, the download included one, excuse me for referring to my phone, but I just want to make sure I give you titles and names correctly. There's a podcast called Raising the Bar, which starts off with an interview with Leslie Miley, who went from being a college dropout to Twitter's only Black engineer in a leadership position. And he talked about some of his experiences being the only Black individual at Twitter or at Apple, some of the I'm going to assume well-intentioned but ignorant things that he experienced in his career. But that isn't the purpose of this video. I'm going to encourage you to listen to it, but again, it's called Raising the Bar. It's on the show called Reply All. They have great shows, by the way, but that's a different conversation. This one talks about not just simply racial and ethnic diversity, but diversity of thought. So there's an interview with a social scientist who talks about the Ketchup Test. The Ketchup Test is, where do you keep your ketchup? Now, it seems like a bizarre question to ask, but the rationale behind it is people who keep their ketchup in the refrigerator. If they run out of ketchup, they go to the mayo, they go to the mustard, they go to pretty standard thoughts. But there's a large subset of people who keep it in a cupboard. And the result is, if they run out of ketchup, they look at the malt vinegar, something that many people wouldn't think of as being a suitable alternative because they're exposed to something different. I know that sounds extreme. However, they've tested it. It's proved valid. The show goes on and they suggest posing a different question. Now, the standard interview question is, tell me about yourself. And there's so much information on the web about how to answer that question, it's almost become meaningless. So, I coach people as to how to answer that. I have two versions of it. One is relatively straightforward and simple. One is a little cute insofar as, it's a standard answer, but it continues on with, I'm sure you hear this all the time, but what makes me different is, and then I suggest ways based upon a person's background as to how they can differentiate themselves that the typical person interviewing for that same job might answer the question. But they suggest a different question. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I'm going to encourage you to try it. And the question basically is the same question, but because it's different words and different framing, it's going to give you a different answer. So the question is, how'd you get here today? And no, I'm not asking about how you commuted here, but how did you get to this place in your life that you're sitting with me today? Now, it's the same question, but we've all learned that the way to answer that question is to really shrink it down to a minute. My background in social work says it's a better question because since it's not a familiar question, they don't have the automatic responses to it. So the tendency will be to give you a more holistic answer. So, for example, with the guest on this show, Leslie Miley, he might have talked about, how he got to college, dropped out, eventually, he grew up in Silicon Valley, one of very few Black kids growing up in the Valley. Walking home from school, it wasn't really safe for him, so he takes circuitous routes, wind up in the mall, and start playing video games there. And some people would walk over to him every once in a while and encourage him. And instead of playing video games, they would show him how to program. So he learned basic programming, and then eventually he goes to college, drops out, becomes a security guard at Apple. He's there late, and as he says, the old-time programmers who hadn't bathed in 6 days would adopt him, and he learned how to program while being a security guard. So you see, you get a fresh approach to someone by asking the question. And eventually he goes into programming, becomes an engineer, and the only black engineer in a leadership position at Twitter. And I'm not going to go into the story. The important thing is about the question. Framing a different question that accomplishes a different thing gets a different answer. And that's really what you want. You want to understand the person that's sitting opposite you. So if that person comes from a different country, a different nationality, you're going to hear about, you have the potential to hear about how that family sacrificed for him and how he has a certain degree of pride in what he does because he's carrying the legacy of his parents. See where I'm going? So you're going to get a more textured answer that's going to help you really understand this person much, much more. What their motivations are, what their history was, what brought them to that room today, and what their experiences were. And that's really what you want. You don't want to sit there with your eyes glazed over because you're hearing the same answer to the same question you've asked a million times. You want to get some real substance from these folks. And this question, I think, will do it much, much better. I'm Jeff Altman. I hope you find this helpful. I hope you try this idea. And if you do, leave a message in the notes for the show, in the comments area on YouTube. Let me know what your experience was and whether you got something different, whether you noticed the person's face go, huh, that's different. So leave a comment on YouTube. Let people know what your experience was. If it's the same, you haven't lost anything, right? But I think you're going to get some different answers. If you want my help with recruiting or coaching people in your organization, reach out to me. My email address is jeffaltman@thebiggamehunter.us, or call me at 646-374-8656. And if we aren't connected on LinkedIn, send a connection request. LinkedIn.com/IN/thebiggamehunter. I accept connection requests from people worldwide, except if your profile looks like a scammer or spammer profile. I'm Jeff Altman. Have a great day. Take care.